I actually couldn't believe it when I heard her talking about it. I was
Oh,
like, and
I love that.
it's the perfect sort of it was just the perfect real life example, and I'd sort of come across like a whole lot of other examples. Like, isn't that like always the way though? Like you start with something and then, you know, suddenly you start seeing it everywhere. It's like you buy a new car, like you think you're the only one.
Oh yeah, the confirmation bias. Now that I'm thinking about design, I'm seeing it.
I'm seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it everywhere.
Love that. So that this whole concept of well, what's design then? If you're seeing it everywhere.
Well, I think it's something that I really observed over the last sort of 18 months. And I guess it's very much sort of COVID linked in many ways, because obviously when we all started going into lockdown about 18 months ago,
200 days ago today.
I know. That's a bit of a depressing statistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it has put some really, really good things. And I think that sometimes we kind of lose sight of that a little bit. So I was thinking about how, obviously in the education space, you know, we were kind of on it, I think, sort of pretty quickly. And we were really cognizant that we needed to get our systems and our processes and basically flip them into a virtual space. But that was education in terms of delivering what we needed to be able to deliver. But I was watching around me, businesses everywhere just pivot. And I hate that word pivot, but I hate it. Like it's just so
it's
bland. It is, because everyone's just using it. But I was watching how I guess they were responding to it and seeing how they were having to think about the service that they delivered and the value that they added to their client base, to society. They were having to think about, well, how do we do that differently? And it was happening in every single industry. So I was watching, you know, the coffee shops and the baristas, and they seem to do it sort of pretty quickly. You know, hospitality, you know, we have like, you know, fine dining at home. I know, Providore, yes. So there's that. Yeah. Like just you know, there was all of that sort of stuff. I was thinking about the way that you know, that trades were kind of operating in different ways. I was thinking about the way that people were running like, you know, in a hospital systems, just absolutely everybody was doing things in a different way in order to deliver a service. I saw a picture of somebody who was doing somebody else's nails through the letterbox thing in the door. Oh. Like, so it's that kind of stuff. And I was and it really got me thinking about how that ability to look at a problem, to look at or to see that there is an issue and to go, okay, I need to do something about this. I need to take action in order to continue to deliver what I always kind of deliver.
And I think you hit on it when you were saying adding value, which I know is a design principle at CGGS.
Yes.
This whole adding value. And then you're looking at the lockdown and kind of the restrictions and looking at them as almost like design parameters in a way. And that's not to say so that we can find a way around the restrictions, but it's kind of like, this is what we've been dealt with. This is kind of our brief per se. And our will is to continue to add value. And so we've got to kind of design a new way to do that. And there's sort of the ingredients in there. So if you think around what you were saying with the hospitality, everything's closed, but the reality is that people still need to eat. And I know that Providore went from, well, let's kind of keep kitchens open and we can probably do this as a delivery from home. And they kind of didn't want to do the hot service, you know, it's the finish at home. But one of the things that they found that resulted from that is you could have an experience that you couldn't have otherwise. So I can have my entree from this fancy restaurant and my main from this fancy restaurant and my dessert from this fancy restaurant, which is what you couldn't normally do. So in fact, rather than just hold that time and space and kind of that emergency design, they found that it opened up for a whole new experience. And I think we've done that in school as well. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Because I think, you know, obviously we all went into it thinking, yeah, this is the way that it's going to work and it's going to, you know, be sustainable for however long we have to kind of do this. But the whole process of design is that you're always kind of iterating. You're always receiving new data back, and you're always adjusting what it is that you're doing. And so I know that from a CTGS perspective, obviously, where we're at now in terms of our home learning model, it's a little bit different to the way that it was when we first began. And I think that's pretty true of not just schools, but in every single organization. Like you're talking about Providore, like when that came out, like it was pretty clumsy initially, but gosh, it's so slick now. And there are all of these, like you said, all of these little extra iterations that they've added, get your variety from a whole lot of different restaurants, or have a Zoom in experience with a chef and he'll cook alongside you. And that to me is just so super, super exciting. And I love that, the capacity to do that, to enact that process, I see as something that is entirely essential moving forward for every single person to have.
Well, I work with Shane's brother, Dean, on stuff through Prince of Trust, and we had to kind of shift and change and rethink Achieve Fest, and that was going to be sort of a big flagship in-person conference. We now get around 12 to 1,800 young people and teachers every term. And it's kind of the case of now it's proven concept that it would probably always be a digital delivery, if not with satellites. But it did get me thinking, I sort of said to Dean, is this in your sort of Delia DNA, this kind of design? And he was pretty clear around, look, you've just got to know what your outcome is. Kind of, those guys have always been, kind of making their way there. They're first generation, parents came here from Malta and made their way. And he's like, that's kind of the grittiness that's in it there as well. But he said, you partner with clever people and you bounce ideas. And I guess like it did get me thinking about the unintentional design, or the kind of, it's in you when you see that. And I know that Victor Papanek says that, because you're referring this article so much to our mate Victor, who we love now. But then you've been thinking about it from like a really deliberate, like design literacy. This is when we talk literacy, numeracy in schools, they're like the basics. And you're saying design should be our fundamental kind of new basic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've really come to that. I've really come to think about it in that way, because I think that design in an educational setting, it's had a bit of a bad rap, in the sense that I think it's kind of been boxed into that kind of artistic sort of sphere, which absolutely it does belong in. It totally does.
Pretty stuff, right?
Totally. But because of that, I think it's kind of been a little bit inaccessible to some people, and from a teacher perspective, that people will say, no, I'm not the artist. I'm not creative. I don't do that kind of stuff. I do this in my discipline. And I think what this article is really trying to sort of push out there, and what we spend a lot of time talking about, is that design's everything. It's everywhere all of the time, and everyone's capable of kind of doing it. And, it just, we use it in different ways to achieve different purposes and to create different value for different, whether it's customers, whether it's students, when it comes to sort of education, whether clients, whatever it happens to be, design is everything. And I think that I want to I'm really advocating, or we're really advocating in this piece, to, don't pigeonhole it as something which is, it's pretty. And
it's pretty. It's not pretty.
And no,
what you said when you first pitched, like, some design literacy, and I was like, oh, yes, I love design, but that sense of, you can't undo it for yourself. I love that. Yep. You've got another one that agrees. Maury agrees.
He's out there. Yeah, he'll get the cameo from Milo.
Puppy cameos. But this whole idea of you can't kind of not be is what Papanek is saying. And I think with what we've seen over 18 months and probably beyond, but it's put a real laser-like focus on the role of design. We'd probably called it innovation before. COVID comes along and innovation is like, not right now. But if you think around, innovation is probably an output rather than a process, and design is kind of, it's your way of making sense of the world. It's your way of adding value. It's those design principles that we talk about. But even if you're sort of saying, I need to get from this place to this place, or I've got my 5 kilometers and my 1 hour, you're designing how you're going to navigate that. Absolutely. And I guess what you're suggesting is, let's do that with more intention. Let's teach that skill with more gusto, so that it can be drawn upon with more intention and more kind of intensity in a way, right?
Yeah, for sure. And and alongside that, I think that if we do that, I think the outcomes are going to be so powerful and so positive for everybody, for not just the person or the receiver of whatever the design happens to sort of be, but also for the person doing the design as well. Because I think that, your capacity to look at a problem and go, yeah, you know what, I can do something with this. I can respond to this in a positive way. I'm not just kind of going to go, oh my goodness, I kind of engage with this and sort of walk away and then go away feeling really bad and talking really negatively to yourself. I think there's a well-being aspect to the way that design, understanding design and the practice of design, the process of design, can really feed into how we feel as human beings and the positivity and the purpose that brings to our lives. And I don't want to use that word resilience, but I will use the word resilience because it just kind of fits sort of here. I think it does breed that, because I think that if we think about the world that we're living in, this VUCA kind of world of, it's volatile and it's uncertain and it's complex and it's all of those things, to be equipped with those tools to be able to respond really purposefully and intentionally to the challenges that come our way, that's a well-being thing.
It's so is.
Yeah.
It's like the antithesis of hopelessness, because it's, I know Andrea Downey from Project Thrive would say resilience is kind of a bit of an outcome where you can teach adaptability. And really what you're doing there that's design, right?
That's exactly
that process you go through, empathizing, understanding, defining, coming up with lots of ideas, testing them out, then embedding that classic kind of design thinking, I guess, toolkit and way. That's how you practically adapt. And as a result, you do that over and over, you do become resilient. You're like, all right, well, this is hit the fan or the floor, wherever it's hitting. And I have the agency to kind of navigate or create something that will either, make that meaning or make sense of the situation or whatever it is. It really helps that hopelessness go away. And I love, there's one quote in this article, and you wrote this, and this is a ripper. And this we're making that case of like everyone's a designer. So it's like you're taking off people you are or you're not, like it's not about that. But this idea that in a world characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity could not have, even if you stop there, you're like, yep, agree.
I know, look outside your window.
But equipping students, and I'd say everybody, with the language and process of design, this part will empower them to impose order on chaos. So we've been saying for about 12 months here, our kind of big wicked question, how might we design certainty in to whatever we're doing? It's a hard one, and some days it's easier than others, but often it's around take the detail out and say, what do you want the outcome to be? So we want year 8s to have a sense of belonging. So rather than saying, so it'll be a camp, as it's always been, it's going to be a belonging activity. And we're going to come together with our tools of design and we're going to design for belonging. And then we can say we can design certainty into that year 8 experience. Whatever the parameters are at that given point of time, Give them to us. We can be sure that we'll design something. I mean, one of the best things I saw the other week, okay, not the fact that we went from 0 to lockdown.
That wasn't great to witness or be a part of, but
look, it wasn't fab. And we were told lockdown starts tomorrow on a Friday at 5:30 p.m. So school, everyone's gone. And I know there was the Year 9 Melbourne Mindset Conference. Now, I reckon that happened however long ago, you would have gone, there's no other option. The thing's got to be cancelled or the thing's got to move. And it was like, bang, it's online. We've gone through the design process. We know what the outcome or the output is. We've got the tools. And it's such a quick turnaround now because we have design literate people who are in charge of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there's also alongside this, and I don't think it's something that is sort of unpacked in here in the article that we've written, but not yet, but maybe we will. Maybe this will be the next bit. I'm thinking about there is a degree of, I think, sort of courage and risk taking that is required when you're kind of enacting this process, because, I think I also see design, it's an act of generosity, because it's an act of service a lot of the time as well. And I think that, to do that, it takes courage. That takes a lot of bravery to say, I think I've come up with it. Here it is. I'm putting it out to the world, take it and I want you to kind of use it. That there's an act of vulnerability there. There's an act of courage there. And so I think that that's also something to kind of tag along with this as well. What do you think?
I adore that. I think you're really right. I'd love to explore that in the kind of next round of what's the mindset then, because it's good to say, hey, guess what? You're all designers. Yeah. A lot of people go, oh, great. Yeah. And a lot might say, oh, okay, so what next? And what do I have to do? And, I think sharing some of our stories around creating by design and putting that out. I mean, we did that in public. We did that in the middle of the staff room. It wasn't away somewhere else where people are walking past kind of going, what is this? Sort of socializing the process as well as the outcome or the output of that as well. And that was kind of looking back on that was gutsy.
Absolutely. And we got feedback and I talked over the top of you. We didn't. No. No, I was just saying, it was, and I hadn't I hadn't sort of thought about that. I hadn't been thinking about that as an example, but you're absolutely right. And I think that, because part of the design process as well is that you do get that feedback along the way too, so people do, give you their 2 cents, and sometimes they give you their 2 cents in a way that perhaps isn't always kind or productive and with an intent to kind of move it forward. And so all of that, I think is, maybe we do need to unpack that. I can't remember if that was on our messy brainstorm or not.
Well, it's in there now. And I reckon to sort of, finish off this sort of bit of the chat and why I wanted to kind of record this, you light up when you do that. I maybe forget when you were like, I've got this idea and we've got to get it out there, because you do run into, that the feedback that sometimes isn't productive, but you kind of then go, well, imagine a world where design literacy was part of everyone's kind of brain and persona and way of doing life. That feedback loop would be so different rather than they're designing it and I'm over here having to use it. I mean, if everybody understood the language of design, it would be, and knowing that empathy is such a big part of it, I reckon it would actually change the way that we kind of connected and communicated with each other. So it's a big kind of gutsy thing to put out there and to say, even we're all designers, so let's get ready for this. There's so much precedent that we've seen, so many case studies to draw on.
I know, it blows my mind every time I walk out the door and go somewhere and I'm looking at these businesses and I'm looking at small businesses, big businesses, and I'm looking at how differently everybody's kind of doing things. My mind is blown. I'm in awe of these people. Nothing but respect for them. Absolutely nothing but respect.
And you, I mean, you've changed fundamentally some things to say, well, how can this be better? And I know a pathway to get there. It's the self-efficacy part. in there as well.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, you know, I'm really fortunate. I'm surrounded by lots of really awesome, amazing people, and we all like put our heads together, and a lot of our ideas get off the ground, and a lot of our ideas don't get off the ground.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, one of the things that I think we talked about doing with this article was sharing our thinking. So this isn't like, we didn't just sit down one weekend and write this. Like,
no.
I think that's important to say. Like the whole sort of design process was enacted in this article, and it's actually been an 11 weeks now.
Which isn't usual for us, but it's like, this got in the way and that got in the way, and you know, but it was like, all right, we want to put this
time.
Yeah, we want to kind of reflect on how we got here as design as a literacy, and you know, there's going to be plenty more to come in terms of the thinking. So you're very right. I think in what we're putting out here, it's like, this is the kind of statement, but this is the kind of back chat behind it, because very rarely do you get to see that process. And I reckon we learned a big lesson when we were putting By Design together and really nutting that through, that when you make your ideas and the process behind it really visible and really public, there's a lot more conversation that then happens, and a lot more people get on board. So I hope that others kind of give us some examples of design literacies, maybe how they're doing it intentionally, maybe how this has kind of shifted the thinking. Because I've got to say, this idea, when you went, close the door, I've got a concert.
I know. And that's all it was. And that's all it was at that time. That's all it was.
Yeah. But, you know, testing that out, I remember thinking, this is compelling stuff. This is not something that will kind of go, woo, firework, that's really cool, and go away. This is something that needs to be really nutted out and solidified and really kind of pushed up the line, because I reckon this is kind of the changing stuff. I don't like the word sort of change necessarily, but I like that this is sort of an iteration of the kinds of skills that we're trying to really make sure.
And I know, and I've heard you speak about that as well. And I think, you know, one of the things when we were doing our really big brainstorm on the whiteboard behind me,
talking
about design during remote learning, I need a whiteboard in my house. Like, I know you were talking about design as it's the activator of every other literacy and competency. And you said that, and I think you were spot on when you said it. So I can't wait to further unpack that in talking and writing and doing the things.
Idea-driven leaning.
Yeah.
So good.
All of that.
So good. All right. Well, let's just keep writing, and, you know, we'll chuck them out. We're not going to say, oh, well, we'll put the next one out next week.
No deadlines. No deadlines.
Life gets in the way, but I love this idea. What empowers me most is the thought that through design, we can navigate uncertainty, because that's the biggest challenge that I reckon all of us are facing right now. It's if somebody could take the uncertainty away, well, maybe it's not a someone, it's a something. And maybe that thing is the process of design.
That's the bumper sticker. That's maybe it's not a someone, maybe it's a something. Thank you. You've done it. You came up with it. I love it. Yeah. That needs to go across the bottom. Can you do that?
Needs to go. Yeah. I'm not an excellent production person. Maybe this is just a raw chunk, but
right. Yeah, we've got nothing but time at the moment. You'll learn.
All right. Well, I will let you get on with your day. And we'll put this out there, and we'd love to hear what people think.
All right. Love talking to you, Sam. Bye.
Hang on.